Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and welcome to another Mastering the Machine webinar. This one for 23 July 2023. And it's been almost a month since I did my last one, and I'll let you in on a little bit of why that is. Today I'm going to be discussing a road trip that I took for about 3 weeks and 3,300 miles and various other things that I'm involved in. Hope you enjoy it. Good morning and welcome to this Mastering the Machine webinar for the 23rd of July 2023. And this is a little different format rather than being a live Zoom webinar. It's been a long time since I did the last one, so I went ahead and just recorded this myself on Sunday morning. And so I'm just here all by myself. There are no questions or anybody else on the webinar. But the subject of this webinar, I'm going to be talking about road trips and travel in general, maybe give you a few tips on how you might accomplish a trip like this with as little pain as possible. This particular trip was a pretty long one, covered about 3 weeks. And I'll also be talking about some other just random topics as things come up. You know how it is normally on these webinars. I kind of skip and hop all over the place. But anyway, what is this about? The Automation Academy itself. I mentioned this in the beginning of most of my webinars. The Automation Academy is a membership site, and people join up to learn things about industrial automation in general. I have some training videos on there for Allen Bradley, Siemens, Beckhoff, doing a lot of Beckhoff work lately and about to do more Omron. There is some job and aptitude assistance there if you're looking for jobs in industrial automation. Lots of system integration tips. There is a very large library of training and technical documents, including a couple of books that I published in PDF form. I do not publish my books as ebooks because they get kind of ripped off and posted for free on the internet, which you're welcome to do that if you join the Automation Academy and download the documents yourself. You can post them for free on the internet, I suppose, if that's what you're into. Anyway, lots of technical documents on there in addition to those books. There is a community with some interest groups on it. IO Central have some platform-specific interest groups on things like Allen Bradley, Siemens, Beckhoff, etc. And I do have these regular events, and often they are Zoom webinars. And you can find more information at these websites, automationllc.com. If you just go to the website, most of my company website is really pointing out features of the Automation Academy more than anything else lately. And I do have a blog, Automation Primer. I haven't put any new content on there lately. Most of my efforts have gone here into the Automation Academy, but I am thinking of posting some other things on there just to not let it languish, since it is about a 12-year-old blog. I kind of hate to just drop it. In any case, so today's topic is road trips in general, and the picture on the left is a map I made a while ago, and I did just recently update it. And these are places across the U.S. where I've either done jobs, systems integration jobs, installed machines, built machines, done jobs for people, and those are the blue ones. And then I got into training about 10 years ago, 2013. And all the little red dots are where I've done training classes. So you can see those are all spread pretty well across the United States. And so I do quite a bit of travel. That's part of systems integration in general. I think people who build machines and work on systems have to go where the machines are usually. You can do some remote work and things, but in general, a lot of times you have to be where the system is. So you can see I've traveled quite a bit there on the left. And this latest trip that I took, you can see I kind of blew up part of the United States here. And I started up here in Nashville, kind of up at the top. That's where I live. And my first stop down here was to drive to Miami, and I took an extra day and actually stopped on the coast on the way down, and then showed up kind of early in the morning to do some work. and I'll explain a little bit on the next slide why I had to do this. Normally, I often do drive to Miami, but usually only for 2-week or longer trips, so that I can carry all my stuff down there and just be comfortable. This trip, the Miami part of it was only a little over a week, but I still had to drive down there. And then I left Miami and I came back up the main road here, which is it's like a toll road, the Florida Turnpike, and came up here through this little red dot, which is Orlando, and then this time cut off to the left on I-10, stopped in the Mississippi Gulf Coast for a little bit, which I haven't done any training, so there's no big dot there or any systems integration. There's really not a lot of industry down there. And then drove through Lake Charles, which is this little dot down here in Louisiana, and ended up in Houston. And I was there for about a week, and then made my way home up here, kind of cross country through Texarkana and Arkansas, through Memphis and into Nashville. And as you can see, this is about a 3,300 mile round trip, and it is kind of a big circle, 5,300 kilometers for those of you overseas who aren't familiar with our miles system. The first trip, so the reason that I had to drive is you can see this little stand here, and this looks like it's in a living room, right? And this living room is the house that I replaced my old blown away office with. And this is, it was probably designed as like a bonus room in this little house that I'm in. But I use it for, it's carpeted, which is not ideal for building things. But I built this little stand about a year ago, and anything that I do for, fabrication of anything very large, I have to do in this room. It's the only area that I have that's of any great size. I have some other rooms in here that are little labs and things, but in general, this is the only place where I can build stuff. And my wife was actually in here and mentioned, hey, this thing's been here for like a year and it kind of blocks away as students come in and take classes in your office. So when's it going to leave, And that was a really good point. So I called Juan Pablo down in Miami and talked about the project that this is going on into, and he said, well, it's been delayed, and we have other things that are kind of priorities, and so I kind of worked it out with him where I'm working on some of those other things, upgrading his program for his syrup line, and we'll be adding a couple tanks to that probably in a few months. But this particular project, you can see here, it's a vision system, and it has been put off for probably at least another year. And I really didn't want it all sitting in this little living room area, so I decided to pack it up. And you can see here that entire stand and all the stuff associated with it is kind of shrink wrapped here and stuck in my car. My car is a decent sized little SUV. It's only mid-size, but everything kind of came apart, including this conveyor and all of its legs and everything, and I stuck it all in here, and I shrink wrapped it and put it in my car and drove down there. And you can see here I even brought my guitar. I know I was going to be gone for a while, so decided to try to make a little bit of a decent time with it and maybe stop, see some friends and things like that. So I was there from June 28th until July 6th. And as usual, stayed in a nice little hotel and got up and walked every morning and had breakfast, and then went into the plant and worked all but one Sunday. Pretty much worked every other day and did a bunch of rewriting for their syrup tanks. And for those of you who've seen some of my other webinars, I've kind of done a tour of American Beverage Depot before and kind of shown some of the things in the plant. I do have a lot of video of American Beverage Depot, so I may do some further work on that later and put it in the Automation Academy and kind of show people what a plant might look like. But anyway, that was the beginning of my road trip. So you can see here I packed things up, and I left actually on the 26th of June and stayed in a little town close to Miami for one extra night and kind of had a nice time there, even though it was super duper hot. and then made my way into Miami the morning of the 28th. My next stop was on the Mississippi Gulf Coast, which, interestingly enough, I was in the Air Force for 8 years and spent a lot of time there. And this is an old Air Force buddy of mine who's now lived there for a long time. You can see we're both kind of getting a lot older than your typical Air Force guys. It was really fun visiting him. The Mississippi Gulf Coast has changed a lot since I lived there. It has casinos now, and that area is pretty nice. And I stayed in D'Iberville, which is just north of Biloxi and the Air Force Base, and went down and checked out the casinos and walked around the harbor and things like that. Really looked pretty nice. Unfortunately, when I went back into where the main gate of the Air Force Base is and down Pass Road and all the way down through Biloxi and Gulfport, I realized it's still pretty depressed there on the Mississippi Gulf Coast, and really I'm kind of glad I don't live there anymore. But Glenn does live there, and he's kind of made a decent little life for himself. He does electronics work. You can see his lab here on the upper right, and I took some pictures of his lab because he's built a pretty nice little set of stuff up in here, and he does a lot of work on avionics equipment, which is what he taught. That's kind of where I started in the Air Force. I started teaching electronics, and that's what he did back in the 1980s. And he has migrated into doing all this work, and I think he would still be a great teacher of how to do this, how to build these little labs and things like that, and how to work on aircraft. You can see here he's just got these little private airplanes along here. It was actually a kind of a nice cool day, the day that I went to visit him here, and really enjoyed it. It was kind of cloudy and a little cooler than it normally is there. So we had a really good time. Flip back to the map here and show you where that is. That is right here where it says Biloxi. As I said, I don't really have a dot here. So I drove all the way to Miami and then drove all the way back up to Biloxi. And that took me, I left Miami on Thursday. I stayed in Ocala, which is kind of where this little intersection is. Then I drove to Biloxi that day. We had dinner that night, and I went and visited his shop the next day. So that was pretty cool. And then the next day, left early, again visited his shop, and then stopped in Lake Charles, Louisiana, which is where this little red dot is. And again, kind of oil and gas town. I did look around there and kind of checked out the where the cargo ships come in and drop off the oil. I have done a class there, you can see, and most things around there involve refineries and transport of oil and gas equipment and that sort of thing. Then drove through some other refineries into Houston itself. And Houston, I had asked a friend that lives up here in the Nashville area, what is there to do in Houston that I don't have to be exposed to all the, the heat and all that stuff. I didn't figure I'd be walking around on Sunday in a park or something like that, or checking out the zoo or whatever. And he recommended a place called the Galleria, and the Galleria is just a great big old, shopping center kind of thing. And I looked around there and I noticed there wasn't anything other than, lots of clothes and shoes and luggage and things like that. And so I looked on my little map, and lo and behold, I found out that there was a Microcenter only probably 2-3 miles away from this Galleria. Now, I'm going to kind of diverge here from the travel part, and I'm just going to talk a little bit about Microcenter. I've done some webinars in the past about Arduino and Raspberry Pi and board level components. I think I mentioned I had an intern this last spring, and he did a lot of work on this component level stuff. And a lot of my, if I'm going to buy something in person, this is the kind of place that I would go to. In my opinion, probably Microcenter is the best place in the U.S. for getting, microprocessors and things like that. And I went around there and looked around in the back, and I noticed they had like 3D printers, everything from, $100 and some up to several $1,000s. They had drones, they had lots and lots of components. And at the end of this webinar, I'm going to do a little chunk here and kind of show you some of the stuff that I got here at Microcenter. I bought a couple $100 worth of stuff, including a little hard drive, a little portable hard drive for my computer. But I think whatever was left over, maybe $150 worth of microprocessor related stuff. So really great stores. And you can see here they have, Florida, and I've been to the one in Maryland, Rockville, Maryland, and there's one in Washington, D.C., Virginia, basically Fairfax here. So I've been to those. I've been to the ones in Atlanta. Those are the ones that are closest to me in Atlanta, but really nice stuff, really cool. And then, of course, as a side note, for automation training, I taught this Siemens Step 7 class, and part of the reason that I had to drive from Miami to Houston is because that class had already been scheduled soon after when I was going to Miami, and I would have had to drive home from Miami because of the stuff that I brought down there, and then fly immediately to Houston. And I just thought, well, by the time I'm done, I might as well throw all these little suitcases and computers in the back of my car and just drive to Houston and visit a friend on the way. So that's why I did that, and that's how this trip kind of came about. So this was the class, 4 people, 2 from a chemical plant and 2 from a pipe manufacturer. They make steel pipe. So as usual, pretty small, localized class, just in a hotel, regional class. So pretty fun stuff. When I got back immediately, right, so I arrived back on Friday after finishing the class on Thursday. I guess that would have been the 14th. Arrived on Friday and then immediately had to teach a class at Automation NTH the following week. And this is that class. And we're just kind of joking around here. And Trevor's standing here. I actually taught the class. I'm sitting down here, but Trevor got up and pointed out some of the things as if you were teaching a class, and that was kind of fun. So as usual, these guys, really bunch of smart guys, lots of experience in systems integration, and I really enjoy those classes. They're pretty high tech, and we really get to kind of create a lot of stuff in the middle of the classes. So that's a kind of a look at this trip, and I figured I'd also show you a little bit. Hopefully this will show up. I'm going to drag this over here. This is how sometimes I do my scheduling, and I've mentioned this before. I keep a whole lot of different information here in this spreadsheet. This is a spreadsheet I started all the way back in 2012. So if I go all the way up here to the top, I can basically look back and see what I've done all the way from January of 2012 when I started this current iteration of my business. And I've always thought this was a good, kind of a neat way to keep a calendar. You can see here when I first started that business, I didn't have as many engagements. I do some long jobs like this one at ATC in Cookeville, systems integration jobs, long days, and because of all the long days, I would be able to take time off in between. So that was kind of what I do before I started teaching. And then when I started, this was at Mid-South Industrial Automation, again, machine building, that sort of thing, contracting. And then I did, let's see, MSI, I don't even remember where that was. Oh, this was McClelland, I think, up in New Hampshire. So you can see lots of travel there. And then all of a sudden, I started getting into teaching. And that was about 2013. Let's see. And so this is kind of how I kept my calendars. And what's cool about it is, like I said, I can go back and look at what I did at any given time and just flash up and down. You can see the blue is generally when I take vacations or do something for fun. And then all these were classes. And then I was back at McClelland here. and lots of classes. ABD, I started doing my work for them right in here in 2014, 2015, lots of ABD. Skip back here, lots more classes, and as you can see, by the time I get down to here, there was some time off in there. Some of this was COVID related stuff, right? Had some dead time in there. Yeah, the tornado, I put that in red. That was a big event for me. This was all stuff. If I have it written in white, this was stuff that I had scheduled but never happened. And of course, that was because of COVID. So a tornado hit me, and then COVID hit, and then I started picking up more work again. This was when I got into my current little facility. And this was also when I was building the Automation Academy. And you can see I started keeping some of my personal appointments and things like that on here, building the Automation Academy, and then slowly got back into training. So this was when things were opening back up. And then you can see here I started doing a lot of work for Automation NTH right in here. All of a sudden I was doing 2 weeks a month for NTH and got very busy right in November of 2022. So this was this current trip. You can see here I do a whole lot of my time here. A lot of times leave Fridays off. But this was, let's see, this was this trip. So very packed in here with time. Some of it was travel. I considered that to just kind of be for fun. And you can see here kind of my future schedule. And as things occur, as I do them, then I highlight them in yellow. So next week I have some of these planned, and I have some other integration possible trips, at least investigating some integration jobs scheduled this week and possibly some of this week. So I haven't written down what days that I'm going to do the work for NTH yet. And you can see here, there's August. But I can plan pretty far ahead of time using a calendar like this. So this is kind of how I schedule a lot of my stuff. That can be a pretty good tip for those of you who don't want to use things like Outlook, which can be pretty intrusive. Other things that I kind of wanted to mention about travel. One of the things that I like to do, of course, as you could tell, I did schedule a little bit of me time in there, right? And stopped into different places and different cities and visited things. But while driving, right, that's a whole lot of driving. One of the things I do is I listen to podcasts. Couple podcasts I'd really recommend. One is Tim Ferriss. Tim Ferriss is the guy who wrote the 4-Hour Work Week, and I'm currently reading a book by him called Tools of Titans. Very cool book that talks about how a lot of very successful people structure their day and give you tips on how to improve your life and, you know, do more exercise. There's people like Jocko Willink on there, various people that Tim Ferriss has interviewed on his podcast. And so lots of good tips in there. But I listen to his podcast. They're 2 to 3 hours long, and they can definitely fill a lot of time. I listen to music. I listen to other kind of talk radio things. Usually I listen to music on Spotify. Another podcast I sometimes listen to is Entree Leadership, which is connected to the Dave Ramsey Show. And he has a lot of good guests on there, a lot of well-known people that give you tips on, you know, how to get things done. And so that's how I kind of fill my time while I'm driving. I do drive up to, I don't know, 600-700 miles some days, and then other days I'll take like a half day at a time. It is a little bit wearing. I'm 63 years old, and it kind of does tend to wear you out a little bit. But that's a look at kind of what I've been up to, the road trips, and hopefully you got some information about that. If anybody has any questions, of course, you're not here live at the webinar, so you can just email me or leave a question on the YouTube channel, LinkedIn, wherever you find me, and I'll be happy to talk to you about how I like to travel and how to make things a little more convenient for yourself. The next webinar, is going to be in August, and I'm not really sure about the format of this. I've been doing this for about, I want to say 3 years now. I'm going to look at my calendar. I think the first one I did was November of, let's see, web. I'm back looking at that Excel calendar, right? And I want to say it was November of 2020. Yes, I see lots of webs in 2021. So the reason I did that, the reason I started these webinars was originally because I took a class from the Membership Academy that taught you how to build membership sites like this. And they said, you should do a live event every 2 weeks or so to keep people interested. And, I've done that. But it's been harder and harder to find guests and come up with new topics. It's not really my full-time job. Unlike a lot of other folks who are running sites like this, I have a lot of other things going on. So I'm not always working on my website and not always trying to create content. I have to do actual either training work, or I write a lot of book content and do some systems integration jobs still. So that keeps me pretty busy, and I can't just always work on webinars and live videos like this. It's pretty time consuming. So I'm not sure what I'm going to do in the future about this. I may reduce this to once a month. Be happy to talk to anybody live who is interested in presenting their content as part of the podcast. But in any case, August, sometime in August is when I'm going to do the next Mastering the Machine webinar. And it may just be another format like this, where maybe I go into board level components or do something on Beckhoff or whatever. But in any case, that's most of what this webinar is about. Kind of about what I've been doing for the last month on the road. Very hard to do webinars and things. And I am going to include a little bit of bonus material here at the very end and show you a little bit of what I bought at Microcenter. But for the purpose of this webinar, that is the end of it. Hope you enjoy it. Hello, folks. Figured I'd show you some of the stuff that I got here at Microcenter. This is something I bought at a previous Microcenter a long time ago. It's kind of a neat little board that you basically solder everything on yourself. So it's a little kit, and it takes music in low, mid, and high frequencies and actually plays these lights. So that's kind of a neat little exercise. I bought one for myself and one for my intern. This was probably a year ago or more in Atlanta. But some of the stuff that I got at this particular Microcenter, here's a bunch of LED lights, right? RGB LED light strip, 60 LEDs per meter, 5 volts. So this is something that Arduinos and Raspberry Pis can make blink. And I'm thinking about taking this area behind me here and redoing it, maybe putting pegboard and holders for some of the different boxes and things that I have back there, making something a little more interesting for these presentations. And I would wind, like these LED strips around that and make them blink or something like that. This is kind of neat. This is an Arduino board, and it has a bunch of relays in it. So if you want to turn things on that are 120 volt devices, you can connect this to your Arduino and then wire all of your AC up to the terminals and kind of isolate all the higher power stuff from the lower power 5 volt and 3.3 volt stuff. This is a Wi-Fi module, and the Wi-Fi modules are in these nice little sealed bags, but 8266 Wi-Fi, and you can take this and connect it up again via your Arduino or Raspberry Pi to a router or a wireless switch of some kind, and send some signals that way. This is literally a little Arduino here, Pro Mini 5 volts. I grabbed this in a hurry, and I want to say it was probably only, you know, $7 or something like that. But it's an actual microprocessor, ATmega 328 microcontroller, 16 megahertz clock rate. It's got some I/O associated with it, and again, you can use it to maybe attach to a board like this and make things blink or whatever. I bought 2 of those, so you can see here. Another thing that I just saw hanging on the shelf that I thought was really cool was a Bluetooth module. So you can take this and wire it into your microcontroller and connect your phone to it, for instance. But that's a look at some of the stuff that I picked up there at Microcenter. Hopefully you'll be able to see it when I play this back. If not, then I will just post some pictures and you'll see those. So we'll see y'all later.